Welcome to my show. I am with my a guest. His name is Artie Vipperla. Artie Vipperla, how are you, sir?
I am wonderful. And without knowing much about you, I pick up enough that I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, sir. Firstly, I want to ask, you are an I-honored Harvard, and you are also drafted into the Vietnam War. Can you tell us more about that area, sir?
Well, very briefly, about the Vietnam War or my history, and
Yes,
yes,
sir.
well, there's a lot that could be said about the Vietnam War, but the most relevant thing, given that we have about a half hour here, and mostly what I want to say is got to do with what's come afterwards, is having been part of a war where I learned from being there undercover, that is, as a spy with a top secret clearance, that my government was lying. And there were a lot of people being killed for a justification that was not valid. So we were there to win hearts and minds and help the people, but we weren't doing that. Not at all. So I came home and I helped campaign against that war, but I realized I wouldn't be satisfied just being against. I would need to do something with my life. And one simple way I said is I have to learn how to be human. Help one person at a time. And if I learn something good, share it. So I got a PhD in clinical psychology. I ended up doing the study for the US Congress to gather the first national data on post traumatic stress disorder. I wrote the first book on healing from trauma through transformational processes. And then, decades after doing meditation, yoga, energy healing, breath work, and Qigong, I got energy sensitive enough. It's like, how's your relationship with your father? Oh, pretty good. How's your relationship with your mother? Pretty good. How is your blood sugar? A little elevated. How are your vitamins? Very good. You're taking good care of yourself, though. So I'm psychic now, and I check my own energies from my trauma work for 40 years. I only skimmed the surface. What was I missing? And I checked on my colleagues. Also, all the trauma work, only it leaves 90% unhealed. What was I missing? And I went on a search, and a revelation came where I wasn't doing anything. I got up one morning, my 67th birthday in 2012, and I was moving without moving. Breath was moving me. And I later discovered, oh, that's the way we learn to move when we learn to, that's how we learn to crawl. Left arm, right arm, leg. That's how we dance. It's how we swim. But only I wasn't doing it. It just was natural. And what was so relevant about that? Oh, I was moving in the path of every energy field from quantum to cosmos. And I could tell my energy was increasing, was doubling within minutes, and underlying trauma was reduced. So I now have a revelation to share that is a blend of meditation, yoga, energy, all the wonderful things, and prayer, because the crown opens. And this is how come you found me. I share what is called harmonize all of you with all for healing the deepest trauma and growing energies like compound interest exponentially. So that's the quick story.
All right. All right, sir. We'll still go to this trauma thing, but I want to ask, can you tell us a little bit what inspired you and what made you write the Healing from the War book?
What's the inspiring idea from
Yes,
my book?
yes, sir.
That there is a new revelation that brings all the different major traditions for growing as a human being, meditation, yoga, energy healing, prayer, all, and they're fused in one, like a blend of an orchestra, only you, it's a natural capacity within you to realize your ultimate nature, not just as an idea, a faith, or a hope, but as something you can feel. And what will that do? Soothe the deepest trauma. Is Topi still carrying some trauma? Yes. Has he done some good work on himself? Yes. Could more happen? Yes. Would he benefit from harmonizing? Would it be good if I show him how to do this? Yes. And then what else? Will this grow his aura so that he has a more of an impact on the world? Yes. How many good people would we have to gather to radiate as much energy as Topi is now radiating? One, two, about three other people. If he practices harmonizing for 2 months, you'd have to gather hundreds of people to radiate what he will radiate. If he does it for a year, you'd have to gather all the people in Nairobi. No, I'm sorry, wrong city. Lagos. You know, English Africa. I remember the map from when I was little. Okay, and lots have changed. Forgive me for that, people.
All right.
You can laugh at a. I'm a fairly well-educated North American. I'm better than most. Okay. So does that convey the idea, Toby?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I want to also ask you, like, in your own idea, how can you define trauma? Like, how can you define it?
Something really bad that happens that upsets you terribly, and your reaction to it is so deep to protect yourself that you keep reacting like that because it happened at a level where you say, I'm never going to leave myself open to that again. So I don't define it like the usual step outside and give big words and da. I go inside the experience. This shit is so terrible. I got to make sure it doesn't happen again or this doesn't get to me. So deep, right? And then I go on automatic. I don't even know I'm protecting myself anymore. It's just the way I am. That.
All right. So, I want to ask, like, what can you say is the deepest source of trauma? Like, in a person, what can you say is the deepest source of trauma?
Wonderful. Thank you for asking that. The usual things that are talked about is, you know, parents are really mean to you, or they beat you, or somebody died early that was so upsetting, or you were in a car crash, or, you know, you got abused in public. What I discovered from checking people energetically is that as traumatic as all those things are, the trauma of traumas happens during the first year of life. You don't have a memory of it. Now, this might be different for you in Africa because you all are still in touch with a lot of your indigenous. I know the word from South Africa, Ubuntu, deep spiritual tradition. So your first year of life, your trauma, 10, you didn't have much trauma your first year of life, Topi. And the people you know, on average, 10, 20, not much. So my talk about this is for more westernized people. Westernized. I don't know what you call them now. You know, people who've gotten estranged from our natural roots. So I've noticed when I check energetically, compared to the men I usually deal with, African men, big heart, big soul, big spiritual connection. Wow. It's going to take generations for the people in Europe, North America, to begin to catch up to that. So, politically, economically, I know African countries have their challenges left over from the challenges imposed by the West, but also the traditions of what didn't happen in Africa. All so much did happen. And then what didn't happen is now developing bit by bit. But the human stature, what is your biggest trauma? Let me see. Let me stop talking about the grand view. Your biggest trauma, different from what I would see. First year of life, that much. Okay, you have listeners. It's I'll do this verbally. Your first year of life is still the about 3% of what's happening for you. Your childhood, 3%. Your teen years, 5, 10, 15% teen years. Since then, you're not a whole lot older than teen years. Since then, no. So it's the teen years. Something that happened. Okay. Now, did somebody do something to you? I don't get it. No. Was it the frustrations and challenges of becoming a man? Yes. Now, here's what I've also found. The deepest trauma is the neglect of the acknowledgement of who we ultimately are. Did you go through an initiation in your teen years? I can't tell whether you have markings on your face. Or is that only Kenya? The traditional peoples knew that for a boy to become a man was a sacred transition, needs to be acknowledged, appreciated, and for modern life, now needs to be schooled and understood what's happening in your body. What are you going to do with girls? What are you going to do with all these new feelings you have? And most of all, do you appreciate you're becoming a man with powers to protect and care and create? And this is a holy gift from God. Did they sit down and talk with you like that when you became a teenager? I don't get it. Your parents, good relationship with your father? Yes. Good relationship with your mother? Did they acknowledge your spiritual essence? Not much. So that's your trauma, Topi. It's not the same for everybody. It's different, varies, but it's usually along the similar lines that human beings in our modern era are treated like we're here to fit in and belong and find our place, play the game, get as much as we can. We are not honored as divine, cosmic, uniquely invaluable heavenly messengers, each and every one. If I had to sum up what's the trauma, the deepest trauma for everybody, it's the neglect of who we truly are. We're made to fit into a mechanized civilization where material things are the most important that you have to make sure you get, rather than our ultimate spiritual and soulful nature.
All right, thank you very much for that, sir. So I want to ask, can childhood also contribute to like childhood in an like a person who is a child that has grown up to an adulthood, can childhood contribute to such person trauma?
Can Sidus?
Childhood.
Sidus. I'm not sure what you're asking me. What is that word again?
I said, can childhood, when someone is a child, contributes to,
Can Sidens? I'm not sure what word you're asking me about. Can what
like,
contribute?
let me say, children, when someone is a child, can
Oh,
it,
child,
yes, can it contribute to someone trauma when someone is an adult?
childhood?
Yes, sir.
Of course. All this happens in childhood, and it begins then.
Mm. All right, like what activities do you think can make someone feel better when someone is already traumatized? What activities do you think, sir?
Well, the first thing, it's going to be different for different people. If you're open to it, finding someone you can talk to who will listen and understand, very important. What I teach, harmonizing, so that you have a way to soothe yourself, absolutely invaluable. Finding a way where you can give what I call the hug of hugs, not wrapping your arms around yourself, but sending the movement inside in a way that's patient, gentle, sensitive, and pleasurable to soothe who in you, the yous left over from all long ago, were upset and scared and anxious and sad and lonely, and you comfort them. That is invaluable. To have that become a daily practice, I'd say most of all, you become the caregiver of you. Yes, you get it. Hmm?
All right, sir. I want to ask, can meditation also contribute to recovery when someone is traumatized?
Can addictions
No, no, no,
contribute?
no, no. Meditation.
Can make a difference?
Meditation. Meditation.
Oh, meditation.
Yes.
Yes, harmonizing is a form of meditation. Meditation is usually taught so you just concentrate on not getting caught in your thoughts, but staying still. Harmonizing is you pay attention to how breathing comes so that you invite breathing to come as breathing once. That's already meditation. And then you invite breathing not only to come as breathing once, but to come into your upper chest to move you in this way that's the original suppleness, and welcome breathing to breathe and move you so you feel the reverberations all through you and you sense the living vibrance in you. Those are three aspects that are all meditative, but they're grounded in direct experience. So it's not just awareness on the top of your head, it's all of you comes into play. And then the fourth step, you invite, allow, welcome breathing, not only to breathe and move and fill you with vibrance, but to overflow to the true extent. And you notice that the vibrance doesn't stop at your skin, but is boundless, formless, limitless. And you are too. And you come home to your true ultimate essence. You're, you're a divine cosmic being. This is a more complete meditative, yogic, energy healing, qigong, prayerful practice than any one individual tradition teaches. Good questions,
All right, sir.
Topi.
Thank you, sir. I want to also ask, how can people who are educated, how can they support students that are experiencing trauma? Students that are experiencing
How
trauma.
can how can people step forward?
Yes. Most especially the students who are experiencing something like that.
Uh, Try me again, Topi. See if I can get it the next time. Say it a little more slowly.
Okay. How can educator
How can
educators,
educators?
yeah,
Uh-huh.
support students who are experiencing trauma?
Well, it's it's a challenging situation where an educator has a very fixed role. Probably the thing that's usually done in schools is to refer someone who's experiencing trauma to the guidance counselor or somebody like that if they have them in the school. So a teacher usually doesn't have the time or the training to do much of anything other than that. But if they have any time or inclination, the first thing is to ask, what's going on? Can you tell me what's happening? Let me listen. You talk and listen, you bear witness. And then only if there's a situation that it's ripe where an educator who knows how to harmonize can say, may I show you something that I do that's very calming? Let me guide you in doing this. That can help.
All right, thank you very much. I want to ask, how does trauma, how does this affect different cultures and different background? Like, how does it affect different culture?
Well, like everything, it affects different cultures differently. And you have a particular culture in mind, like West African, English speaking West African. So
All
I
right.
would first have to assess at a number of different levels
Okay.
because there's what happens in individual lives and families. You know, how much child abuse is there in Nigeria compared to the United States? Not a lot. How much of the confusion and difficulty or the upheaval in Nigeria is, all of this is very complicated and controversial, you know, tribal antagonism, some 10, 20, 30. How much is it left over from what didn't happen, what didn't get resolved since liberation? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. All colonial leftovers, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Yes. So how much is it like throughout Africa? Not yet realized leadership, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever that means. You know, there was Nelson Mandela. But who's been like Mandela since Mandela? Okay? But, what's the problem with Africa? Not enough Mandelas. That's one way you can say it. The trauma of Africa is the death of Mandela and the failure to replace him. That's one way to describe it. But of course, that's not very practical. That gets you to smile. But that's an important truth because the best of Africa is beyond world class. Mandela was an inspiring example for all of history. That's what's possible in Africa. So, a lot of the problems are the frustrations of the people not yet having that level of leadership and inspiration that can be owned as one of us, but is a human for all humans. So something of that nature. The Pan-African movement's really important, yes, but with what is it, 53 or 54 countries, uh, you'll you'll notice I'm a little better informed than most Americans.
Yes.
I at least know that there are not that many African countries, right?
Yeah.
And I also know that in French Africa,
Yeah.
the British, for all the problems for the British, they were more enlightened than the French.
Mm.
You know, the former British colonies, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and India, they're doing better than the former French colonies in North Africa. So, and Haiti. So the French had their revolution, but and great ideas. And I speak fluent French, and I went to France. But there are those issues as well. The legacy of the colonial traditions, an unhealed trauma, a not yet healed trauma. So that's a little, some illustration of a response to your question. How
Mm,
does trauma affect different cultures? And looking to get specific to what's happening for you all as close as I can get.
mhm,
Not, I have visited, but I have not lived in Africa. And I'm closer to people of color in the United States than most Americans. I had a girlfriend,
okay.
and, you know,
Mm,
I was raised by a woman of color. My mother worked, and we had a woman who came in from the time I was 2 years old, and
mm,
her big heart and beautiful soul was the way I got warmth. You know, a woman descended from slaves who nevertheless still had her heart and soul. So that's something of how I know Africa.
all right. All right. Thank you very much for that, sir. I want to also ask, with time and with the way everything has been developing, how has trauma been, how has the definition been, changing with the development we are having today? How has how someone can explain it? How has it been changing with our times of today?
How are the definitions changing?
Of
Yeah,
what?
of trauma, like understanding what it is, understanding what trauma is in our time today.
Well, to give a very short
Mm,
summary,
all right.
it appears on my webpage. If people go to healyourdeepesttrauma.com, healyourdeepesttrauma.com, they'll see at the very top that I call this Trauma Healing 4.0. And then I lay out 1.0 is psychology, 2.0 includes the body, 3.0 includes energy and spirit, 4.0 blends all of those with divine cosmic resonance. What does that mean? I'll get to it. So, the original psychology of trauma from Freud and variations since was what I basically laid out to you before. Something bad happens, or there's a neglect, and the inner reaction to it is self protective and says, without somebody thinking or saying this, in effect, does decide, I'm not letting that happen like that again. I'm going to protect. And you close down, you form what is a a fortress and also a prison energetically. So, further developments in trauma work had to do with how that prison and that fortress are, it's called in the body. And so there's various things that people do, or make a sound, or move this way or that, or do yoga, or, yeah, like you said, meditation. And the third level says, oh, yeah, meditation, because, you have to become a better human being and all that. What I have added, and I'm a pioneer in this work, in that I did the study for Congress that first gathered national data on trauma and first linked trauma with healing through transformation. I've discovered that all that trauma work leaves 90% unhealed. And then you ask me, well, what's deeper than anything turned up by psychology and the body and the spiritual and energetic? That original neglect of acknowledgement that each and every one of us is divine, cosmic, uniquely invaluable heavenly messenger to be revered and cultivated as that. So the Dalai Lama didn't have that problem. You know, the Dalai Lama from Tibet, he was raised as an incarnate Lama from the time he was an infant. So he was recognized as he is divine, cosmic, heavenly messenger, uniquely invaluable. We're all that, every one of us. So trauma is not yet caught up to where I am, the trauma work. I haven't yet done my work of talking to more people like you on podcasts, but I'm getting going and you found me.
All right. Thank you, sir. Generally, I want to ask, what is the advice you can just give generally to the audience, sir?
Say that one more time. What can I do to the audience?
No, no, no. Generally, what advice can you give to the audience?
Well, anybody who is awake enough and tuned in and appreciative enough to have stayed, first of all, found their way to you, and now stayed all the way through this podcast, I can't say nothing better than, first of all, thank you. Well done. Good for your visionary, unusually evolved nature. Now do yourself the favor and give me the joy of going to healyourdeepesttrauma.com, reading all through, sign up for my $12 book that will go in more detail. I read it into video, and there's a free video guiding you in the instructions of how to harmonize and make that a practice and find your way to me if you can do, let's see, West African time is 7 hours advance. Yeah, 7 hours on Fridays at noon on Facebook, noon Eastern, which is 7 o'clock West African time. I'm on Facebook free. You can find your way to me and I'll do energy readings and you can catch the energy and join my little community there and we can go further. Maybe I'll encourage you to take my course. So that's the advice. Get the practice, stay connected, and thank you for honoring me with staying this far. And let's see if it's right for us to go further.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Like normally, there's a question I used to ask. If there is anything you have loved to, take from the forefathers, the ancestor, what do you think that thing would be?
If there's anything,
Yes, you will have loved to, take or inherit from, the ancestors, the forefathers, the one who have left us. What do you think that thing would have would be?
the forefathers, and I would add the foremothers, who were deeply in touch with the sacredness of all of nature and all fellow beings under ultimate blessings of God and the sacredness of every moment. This, their awakened, beautiful, soulful nature. This.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. I also appreciate you for the little time you gave to me. I want to say thank you very much, sir. And hopefully, thank you very much. I really appreciate. Thank you.
My great joy. Thank you, Topi. How great for your precocious wisdom and insight and all the preparation you did and your acknowledgement. All beautiful, dear man. Excellent. And good for you listeners who listen in to a guy like this. Stick with him. He's the real deal, as we say.
Thank you for that.
He is the future of Africa.
Thank
How do
you.
I know? I can tell his soul, 10, 20, 30, an old soul, intelligence, 10, 20, brilliant, intuitive, yes, his heart, 10, 20, huge heart, a
Okay.
loving heart, soulful, intuitive, evolved, young man, destined to be a leader.
Thank you, sir.
Honor him.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.